Hello, welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today I'm a little bit stressed out. There are reasons for this, and we will talk about them in a minute. But first, let's go through what we'll be talking about on this pleasant Sunday Stuff and Things. First of all, we have some upcoming videos for you, including gussying up my beautiful 1962 Dunhill shell Briar. We'll get into that a little bit, some stuff on Stuff and Things Plays coming up. The fact that I am sacrificing so much for you right now, making content, I'll explain why that is and why maybe I seem a little flustered right now. And then I guess the topic of the show, the fact that my fiance and I have been watching some really good, really old movies, and I want to discuss that a little bit. What makes them so good? Why aren't films really, in my opinion, up to the same level as they were way back when? Now, when it's pretty much all superhero movies, Marvel movies, things like that. And then, of course, we will have your questions in. Hashtag askstuffandthings. But let's see if I can just make it through this episode. All right, I mentioned upcoming videos, but before we even get to the upcoming videos, let me take a sip of coffee. This new coffee mug I got that I found on Amazon, it is a 24 to 105 millimeter Canon EFL lens, which I think is pretty cool. It looks very, very much like a camera lens. In fact, when I first got it, I brought it in to my fiance and said, look, I got a new lens. And she looked very irritated and very annoyed because she knows how much camera lenses cost. And then I showed her that it was, in fact, a device in which to put my beverage, which is what I have just done. I'm going to put the lid on. I kept the lid off for the full effect, but the lid kind of ruins it. There are some of them that actually have like filters, or it looks like a filter, a screw-in filter, or like a lens cap, but then you of course can't drink your coffee through that. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of fun. Okay. Speaking of camera stuff, I posted a video last week that none of you watched, and it was about my camera bag that I got recently for the camera equipment for the fancy new camera that I'm using to record right now, and when I bring it out to go photographing things, it is coffee. It is a Domke F2 camera bag, and it is awesome. And if you liked in the past, and I haven't done too many of them lately, but the kinds of reviews that I used to do with leather goods or just various products that didn't necessarily have to do with the pipe hobby, but were just products that I enjoyed. I did reviews of knives, reviews of boots, reviews of all sorts of different things, just things that I like. That's what that Domke review, D-O-M-K-E review is like. It's sort of hearkening back to some of the older kinds of content that we used to have on the channel. So even if you're not into photography, I think it's a good review. I think you should check it out. That posted last Wednesday. We are also still going on with our series on Stuff and Things Plays, including the Soma series, which I think is about winding down. They're probably, what is that, a helicopter? It sounded like a World War II dive bomber or something. The Soma series, I think, is almost over. Maybe a week or two left, or 2 or 3 episodes left. It's getting really good. You should check that out. Cyberpunk 2077 as well. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the Stuff and Things Plays channel. You can get those videos. And then I was working on something today, just finished recording it. You may recognize my Dunhill 1962 shell Briar. But you may also notice, if you've been paying any attention to what I've been using lately, that this pipe looks a lot nicer than it did. The stem looks a little bit shinier, the bowl looks a little bit shinier. Well, I did a video in which I did a lot to this pipe. I will show you how I ream it out. So if you get too much cake in the bowl and you need to get rid of some of that, I show you how to do that with pipe reamers. I also sort of reamed out the shank, the airway here, cleaned it out really well, the whole stummel. And then with the stem, I will show you how I rather laboriously sanded it down with increasingly fine grits of sandpaper and polishing pads until I got it looking rather nice. There was a lot of oxidation on the stem just looked pretty nasty. It was starting to taste pretty nasty too, which can happen when you get a lot of oxidation. So I sanded all that off and then just decreased the grit. No, what is the word? I guess increased the fineness of the grit of the sanding pads I was using till I got it nice and polished, and then finish it all up with some wax on the outside. So I will show you the full process of doing that. That is the video that will be coming up on Wednesday, and you should check it out. All right, I mentioned sacrificing for you. You know what's going on right now? The Seahawks playoff game against the Rams is going on right now. It is technically halftime. They are behind 20-10. The Rams have doubled their score. They are 10 points behind, and I am very quickly trying to record this video because basically with my schedule being what it is, if I wait till the end of the game to record this video, I won't have the proper time to then edit and everything. And so I'm trying to shoehorn it in right now because I want you to have your video on Sunday, but I also don't want to miss the game. And I'm hoping that by the time I finish this, the game will still be in play. I mean, the Seahawks will still be viable as winners of the game. It's not looking too good right now, as I just stopped watching. Bobby Wagner got injured, and he is crucially important to that defense. Russell Wilson's not looking great in spite of a very nice pass to DK Metcalf when he had to scramble and move out of the pocket and then went like 53 yards or something to DK Metcalf for a score. But they are back, or they are down 10-20. I'm very nervous about this game. I'm feeling a bit stressed out about this game, but I'm going to try to be calm, put that behind me, and move on with this video. I just want you to know that you should be extremely grateful about the fact that I am recording right now, in spite of the fact that the Seahawks are playing. You're welcome. Old movies. I mentioned at the top of the show that I have been watching a lot of old movies lately with my fiance. In fact, speaking of old movies, you'll see a lot of this going on in old movies. My fiance is a film nut. She loves film. She has watched more films than probably anyone I've ever met in my entire life. I think that she has watched almost every single film that is featured on the Criterion collection. The Criterion has a list of all these films, and she has watched, and there are hundreds of them, and I think she has watched every single one of them. She loves it. And I like film as well. I could also say that I like movies, which I would consider something slightly different than film. But I don't watch very many typically. But lately, she has been getting me to watch a lot of these older movies from the late 30s, early 40s, almost all of them starring Cary Grant. Now, many of them I have seen before, or some of them I have seen before, but some of them I'm just seeing for the first time. And it's just struck me so strongly just how good these movies are. Let me read you some of the titles here that I've watched recently. There was Bringing Up Baby, which I had seen before. That's Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. The Awful Truth with Irene Dunn and Cary Grant. Holiday with Grant and Hepburn again. Philadelphia Story with Cary Grant, Hepburn, and also Jimmy Stewart. His Girl Friday. My Favorite Wife. I also watched Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House. These are all from like late 30s, early 40s. I think Mr. Blandings was late 40s perhaps. And obviously I've seen movies with Cary Grant in them before, but I've just been struck by how good these films are. I think a lot of people think back, oh, this old black and white movie from the 30s or 40s. What is it going to give me now in this modern age? Can it have any sort of relevance? Can the humor hold up? Can any of the social commentary hold up? The answer is yes. Now, there will obviously be a few things in these films that to modern sensibilities may seem problematic. There are a lot of instances of black house servants, quite often. That's usually the only role that African Americans have in these films, so that could be considered a problem, definitely. But as far as like the way men and women interact with each other, the humor, it's all a lot more sophisticated than I think people would normally give it credit for. And it reminds me that we now, or maybe that's a horrible way to start a sentence. I think almost anyone in any time period often looks back at the past with a feeling of superiority. They think that they have it all figured out. It's like we think we have it all figured out. Not necessarily that our society is in an amazing place, but as far as our mores, we think that we know better than they did in the past. And in many ways that's true, but I don't think we give people in the past enough credit, or as much credit as they deserve. Some of the humor in these films can be kind of slapstick. Some of the plots can seem fairly obvious, but we also have to bear in mind that they may seem obvious now to us because we've had decades of people sort of riffing on these same ideas and same situations. So at the time, they were probably a lot more original. But as far as just like the humorous situations, the wordplay, I think in many ways they're far more clever than some of the scripts you will see now, some of the dialogue you see now in modern movies, and especially if you're talking about the tentpole, AAA, like flagship Hollywood movies that we get now, which are all the superhero movies, ridiculous, mindless action movies. These films have a lot going for them and a lot to recommend them. And I really suggest that if you guys haven't watched any of these classic Cary Grant movies, and it just so happens that I've been watching classic Cary Grant movies, you should check them out. They are very, very, very much worth seeing. It seems like, to me, it was sort of old Hollywood at the height of its powers, as far as telling a story, framing a scene, casting. Cary Grant is amazing. Katharine Hepburn is amazing. And I don't understand now why we don't have any stars. I guess the idea of like a film star just doesn't really exist the way it did back then. But even so, I can't think of a single actor even a tenth as charming as Cary Grant is on screen. Now, these movies are all well before my time, so it's not like I'm looking back with nostalgia on something that I used to enjoy as a child. But Cary Grant is just so dynamic and so charming and so great in these movies. And there's no one who I can think of who comes anywhere near being that engaging on film. And as far as like Katharine Hepburn or Irene Dunn and a lot of these actresses, they're amazing. They're so great. Katharine Hepburn is no like amazing drop-dead gorgeous beauty, but she is so charming in these movies that you just feel this dynamism, like, and you're drawn to her as a character and as a person. And it just doesn't exist. And I know this could be coming off as like grandpa is angry because things aren't as good as they used to be when he was younger, but I'm not grandpa, and these movies were not the movies I watched as a kid. Obviously, when I was a kid, it was the late 80s, early 90s, and those were the kinds of things I was watching. I was not watching Cary Grant movies when I was a kid. Well, actually, I do remember watching Bringing Up Baby as a kid. There's a leopard in that, so that's probably why I liked it. But anyway, if any of you are put off by black and white or put off just by the age of, like you won't watch a movie that was made before 1990, just check it out. Try The Awful Truth. That one I really, really enjoyed with Irene Dunn and Cary Grant. The Philadelphia Story with Jimmy Stewart. His Girl Friday. All of these, all the ones I mentioned. Bringing Up Baby, Holiday, My Favorite Wife. Give a few of them a try and just see, if you don't agree with me, that they still really hold up and that maybe there are some things that we could learn about storytelling and just the craft of filmmaking now in this modern age, when every single thing that we see now seems to have to be a crazy tentpole franchise film. Maybe we could go back to something a little bit more interesting. And some of these films, like, there's basically the same plot in about 3 of these movies I've mentioned, where Cary Grant is with a woman, they are estranged, and then he tries to get her back because of various things that have happened. Like, that occurs in several of these films, but it works every single time because of the casting and the dialogue, and I don't know, they're just great. What happened to Cary Grant? Why is there no Cary Grant anymore? All right, gang, it is time for hashtag Ask Stuff and Things, and that is where I answer questions from you. If you have a question and you would like me to answer it on the Sunday Stuff and Things, tweet at SATBradley with the hashtag askstuffandthings, and I will do my best to answer you. Also, if you are a Patreon supporter, you can write to me there and I will answer your questions. And I also try to grab some from YouTube every once in a while. Before we get into this, I am enjoying a little bit of Peterson. Is it in the light? I think it is. Okay, you can see that in my lovely little Japanese pipe. I will get that going. And we will start with a question from Patreon from Krisztian Kovacs, our newest shout-out level Patreon supporter. Krisztian says, "Today my Dunhill Shell Briar 3101 arrived. I'm looking forward to trying it and don't think you have any influence on me whatsoever. Ha 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 ha. As you have experienced smoking a few of them new, how long did it take to break them in? Do you smoke your Dunhill pipes with or without the metal tube? And finally, do you use a different pipe for a different kind of tea?" That last question we've answered several times. I don't worry about keeping different pipes for different blends. If I'm going to be using one pipe for Elizabethan, I will also put an English mixture in there, or I will put a Burley blend in there. I don't really care. I won't, however, smoke a very... well, I almost never smoke aromatics anyway, but I definitely won't use a pipe that, I guess in general, I just won't use a Briar pipe for any aromatic or any obviously flavored blend. If I have to smoke one of those for a review or something, I will probably use a Cobb for that. But if I were someone who smoked aromatics on a regular basis, I would probably keep one dedicated pipe for those aromatics, and then everything else would be non-flavored blends, English mixtures, straight Virginias, Burley blends, things like that. So that was your last question first. You mentioned how long did it take to break in a new Dunhill pipe? It's hard to give you a time exactly because, you know, I'm not using them every single day. They're part of a rotation. So if I have a bowl and then put it aside, it may be 5 days, 6 days, 7 days until I get back to it again. And also, depending on what era your Dunhill is from, it could have like a carbonized bowl where they have put a sort of head start on your cake inside the bowl, or sometimes they're just a completely natural. Actually, I'm trying to think now. Have any of my Dunhills been completely natural? I've had Costellos that haven't had any sort of treatment on the bowl. I think the Dunhills that I've had that have been unsmoked have always had some sort of carbonizing, I'll just say that, done to the bowl. So in that case, just use the standard procedure. If you want to be extra careful, just go about half full bowl, smoke it down, make sure you don't get too crazy, don't puff on it too hard, don't get it too hot. Let it rest for a couple days, do that again, then you can fill it all the way. And I'd say, I don't know, within 10, 11, 15 bowls, you should be at a fairly safe spot. It depends on the pipe, it depends on the size, it depends on how you smoke it, but just go easy, just be careful. Next, from Gavin Jones via Twitter, at GAJones06, says, "What kind of format do you use for writing your reviews? I wanted to start with Paco Journal with a flavor wheel similar to whiskey." Hashtag askstuffandthings. What format do I use? I just basically have a piece of paper, and when I do my review, the order that I do the review is the order in which I write things down on that piece of paper. So I talk about the blend, the name of the blend, who it's manufactured by. I talk about the tin description, if there is a tin description. And then I get into the vital stats, and all the ones that I list in the review, those are what are listed on my little sheet of paper. Then I get into, what's next? Room note, maybe? Or tin note, then room note. And then the body of the review is just what I think about the blend. And that's what I have on my piece of paper, and that's basically the formula that I've been following almost from day one. Since I think Elizabethan was my very first review, and that is how I did it then, maybe? I need to go back and watch that review, but I think so. But thank you for the question, Gavin Jones. Next, from just another username at justanno366062338. Hey Bradley, been watching some of your older videos. Could you start a weekly segment dedicated to your favorite homeless people stories? It's sad, but makes for some entertaining stories. No, I don't think so. I appreciate the question, but when I told those stories, it was because that was what was happening to me. It was me checking in with you, letting you know what was been going on with my life. And when I lived in that area that was rather inundated with that kind of situation, that was what I was talking about. But I don't think it's very constructive to just say, okay, for entertainment value, I'm going to have a segment devoted to those kinds of stories. Because first of all, those stories haven't really been happening to me anymore because I don't live there anymore. And second, it just seems like kind of in poor taste. And I'm not trying to say that you're in poor taste for asking about that, but that's just kind of how I feel about it. But thank you for the question, gangs. Questions gang, not question gangs, is what I wanted to say there. We love getting questions from you, so please keep them coming. Remember, hashtag askstuffandthings at SAT Bradley. Also on Patreon. Also, I try to answer on YouTube. But gang, I think it's time for the very best part of the show, and that is where I thank you, the Patreon supporters out there, for your amazing support. If you would like to support the channels, there is a link in the description box below. Your support goes towards things like the fancy camera that I'm using to film right now. I still need to pay that bad boy off. And we're still looking for more equipment, different lenses, some different lighting and stuff like that. So all your support goes towards that. Also, we still have t-shirts available. There is an I Like Stuff and Things t-shirt. There should be a link in the description box below and maybe some sort of box below the video as well to our storefront for those t-shirts, so check that out. But gang, every week we like to shout out the special people who support the channels at $25 or more a month. People like Ryan McFadin, Kirk Crompton, Private Eye, Cody Striegler, Glenn, Gus, Jason Buckner, Jen O'Side, John Leone, Krisztian Kovacs, Joshua Jackson, and Gloria Phillips. I mentioned that Krisztian was our newest 25 and up supporter, but I forgot that we just got Joshua Jackson and Gloria Phillips. You got 2 shout outs for the price of 1. And also the Maniacs, the crazy people who support the channels at $100 a month. They are unhinged, and their names are Peter Straub, Bob Magee, and David Gaudreau. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you all so much for watching. I have to get back to the game now. I know that it's probably the 3rd quarter, and I am very nervous about turning it on and seeing what the score is, but it is my duty to watch it. In the meantime, please, if you haven't watched the review of the Domke, it's just Domke, F2 shoulder bag that posted last Wednesday, please check that out. Be sure to watch the video about refurbishing, restoring my 1962 Dunhill shell Briar coming up this Wednesday. But until next time, until we meet again, I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things. I'll see you later.